We've had almost 2 years of social distancing and shutting down the vital components of what is at the heart of community, such as parks, trails, cafes, community centers, events, and social gatherings. As we look together as a nation to recover from the effects of the pandemic, we find ourselves at a unique crossroad in time. We are now faced with finding solutions to reconnecting our communities again. We recently brought together almost 500 people from across Canada to our online RECONNECT Making Communities Essential event. Over 2.5 days, we had a series of keynote presentations and masterclasses to discuss how we're going to rebuild social connection after the COVID pandemic. Thank you for joining me, Heather Keane, from the Tamarack Institute, for one of 6 discussions we have had about RECONNECT, making our communities essential. In this discussion, Peter Block and Paul Bourne talk about mobilizing assets and reconnecting community. Peter and Paul talk about changing the way we organize community from a deficit approach to one that is centered on gift-mindedness. And how can you be active in a place on things that you care about? As a bonus, we've also shared comments and inspiration from participants to deepen the conversation.
John McKnight and Peter Block have been 2 of the most important influencers for Tamarack. Their work, their thinking, their inspiration, their encouragement all the way through. After you broke your groundbreaking book on community, it was like the first book that just kind of enlivened us in this space, you reached out to John and you wrote a second book called Abundant Communities, which has shaped the work of so many of us. What are some of the things that he's taught you, that he's engaged with you, that he's evoked in you, that have inspired you for these years?
I met John at a community gathering in Longmont, Colorado, organized by the police chief, Mike Butler. And I was first on the docket, and I had been reading John, and all of a sudden somebody said, "That's John in the back of the room." And so after I talked, I said, "Hi, John, I'm Peter, I'm a fan." And he said, "You're talking about what I'm talking about." I said, "Really?" And so I joined him in his presentation, and we kind of fell in love at that moment.
Participant reflection. I had the opportunity to travel with John McKnight a few years back, and the entire flight, we talked about community building, and he gave me so many ideas of how to use my gifts to make our city a better place. Many of those ideas have been used to create the programming that we have in place today. I have been so inspired by him and have learned so much from him, and for that, I will be forever grateful.
The radicalness of John is his absolute focus on gifts, gift-mindedness. And it sounds simple, but most of our livelihood is organized around deficiencies. It's very hard to raise money based on, most of our language is organized around what's wrong with you. Are you poor? Are you uneducated? Are you homeless? None of those describe any human being. They're just a rhetoric that say, well, let's do something we know and you don't. And what you've done at Tamarack is to stop that and say that we all have a piece in constructing an alternative future for all of our citizens. And it's not based on what's wrong with you.
Participant reflection. As a parent of kids with disabilities in the school system, we're trapped into focusing on deficiencies in order to access needed supports. It's demoralizing. We need to work to transform the educational sector to an ABCD mindset, to see kids as needed and not needy.
And so to me, John has held to that. And so gift-mindedness, what are you good at? He's also believed in the neighborhood as a modern wilderness. So we know that the Exodus story was kind of still happening. They're still run by Pharaoh. They're just called the, free market industrial culture. And so John just has been steadfast. And then what I gave back to John was very simple. After he stopped talking, I would break people into small groups. And that's basically what we've done for 20 years. John talks, and I say, thank you, John. Now everybody break into small group. And the small group is a way to experience in real time all that John stands for. And so it's been, and you're part of that, Paul. You brought that, you put it into action. And Tamarack and people here, and I listened to some of the mayors talk and stuff like that. And I was looking the other day, and somebody broke the world in 3 pieces. They said there's a private sector. All right, we know what that is. Then there's the public sector, which is government. And then there's the commons. And in a way, the public and private have sucked the life out of the commons, which I heard in some of the people talking. And so in some sense, what John represents is the restoration of the commons as something that's newsworthy.
You also talked about that the tomorrow we've already stepped in to our tomorrow, but we do not know. We do not know it. And these are spiritual kind of understandings, questions. Share with us this idea of the future of community, the fact that maybe we are already there, but we don't see it.
I would not say we're where we want to be, but I like the notion that someday never will occur. That today is someday, and everybody says, well, someday we will. And every city has Cincinnati 2025, Cincinnati, all that visioning, where we might say, well, where does the future we desire exist in small ways in this moment? And I think that's what you do with a conference like this. You're saying, look, you don't have to wait for anything. I don't get hope. I don't get optimism. I don't get pessimism. It seems to me they're just opinions I have about whatever I want to think about. I think what this community represents is a stance for faith, to believe in something. But I would love to think that whatever the future, I can find it next door. What you're telling me is that I can find in my neighborhood everything the country whines about on a national basis. And at least in the US, you're more civil. So thank you for that in Canada. But in the US, it says we're divided. I don't believe that. I'm not. Are you divided? Am I divided? And I loved one of the things that the mayor said, we have a difficult conversation every week. We've decided that once a week, all of our staff is going to have a hard time. Well, that means you're sitting down with strangers. We can do that. My neighborhood is crazy. It's all of them are, but it's not, you can't name it as divided. And so I think what we can focus on is where does coherence or community or connection or generosity. There's good Samaritans every one of our neighborhoods. Forget about the city, it's too big. 1.3 million people. I don't know what that is. There's neighborhoods in proximity, but in the desert where you live, the neighborhood where you live, you will find a stranger. And if you're all involved, you're going to take care of that stranger. I've been on a neighborhood council for 6 years, and I did it, I don't know, because it helped me get connected. I didn't do anything useful. But then sometimes people get mad at you, and you meet them in the grocery store. Well, what the hell do you do with that? Avoid the produce section because this person is there. No, you walk up, you say hi, and you grab your lettuce. And I just feel that that's the future we imagine, and that we get distracted by the narrative, the public narrative of divisiveness, right, left, all that kind of stuff. It's lost. I know that it matters, but I don't have to wait for that to shift for me to live into a transformation that I have in mind. And that transformation is to be active in a place for a while on things that I care about. And if you ask people what they care about raising a child. They care about a local livelihood. They care about overcoming people's loneliness and isolation. I care about my health. I care about my safety. All of those that I've learned from John is that all of those are within my power to create the moment I stop shopping. So when 9/11 hit, our president said the best thing you can do is go shopping. And we believe now I can outsource the raising of my child. Okay, thank you, school. I can outsource the safety of my neighborhood to the police. I can outsource my health to the medical profession. No.
Participant reflection. We all need each other. We cannot outsource our lives to be managed by others.
Your health, and this is what you represent. My health is determined by my connectedness to people around me and paying a little attention to what I'm doing with my body. But mostly it's a social, if you volunteer, if I join one of your groups, any Tamarack's circles, I'm going to live 2 years longer. I don't have a doctor promise me that. I have commercials on television promise me that. I'm their target. I'm an old man. I'm an old white man. They're promised me immortality if I just buy something. Well, what you represent, what John represents, is that everything I care for cannot be purchased. And that keeps me up at night like you.
Peter, I want to just ask you about the arriving of awareness, that there's kind of like I'm not sure how to describe it. There's a new wisdom arising. There's an intense energy around the question of equity, of anti-racism, of the sense of we are all needed if we are going to succeed as a people, and to break down these barriers, and to lift up those who have often been pushed down. Can you reflect on that with us? How have you been responding to this? Where has this been kind of working itself out in your heart?
Well, our hearts are vast spaces. I would like to think I've worked something out in my heart, but so far I feel a lot of the conversation will take us nowhere. I get discouraged by it. I hear I'm on a board and they say, well, let's get a Black person on the board. Well, they're going to get somebody that graduated from Yale. The head of the Ford Foundation is African-American. He says, we've been getting people from Ivy League all these years. I guess it hasn't. And the idea, well, let's hire a diversity vice president. So none of that is powerful to me. Let's work on unconscious bias. It's not powerful. What's powerful is the statement that, what matters, who owns things. And so the work that I'm investing in and caring about is to redistribute the ownership of land and housing and enterprise and create a Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street in Oklahoma and Tulsa some time ago, they just leveled it because the Blacks were too prosperous. So it's a complicated conversation. We've had that as an intention. I worked on the poverty program in 1968. And we had a war on poverty. Most of our wars, like other things, have not been that successful. It seems that what you declare war on, it grows. But I really think you're talking about redistributing and breaking up the real estate cartel. Because in my town, everybody believes in progress. Progress means renewal. Renewal has meant historically in the real estate world, tear it down and build something new. And so I think real equity is about money. It's about land, but commonly held land.
Participant reflection. Money. Who owns things? Redistribution of wealth. There it is. Equity is the sharing of land, resources, and wealth.
Land that we hold in common, and a lot of your projects are in that direction. So that land no longer becomes a thing of acquiring money. Land becomes a place that we prevent displacement. And so to me, the modern plantation is really about displacement. We're still doing it in Cincinnati. We go into low-income neighborhoods. Is that what they are? Low income, am I described by my income? And then we send police in to give citations. And then we call the place dangerous. And then we say, well, let's tear it down and build a soccer stadium. But I really think the equity consciousness is there. And I think what you're doing, what Tamarack represents, is to say, well, let's really share in the ownership of business, housing, land, entertainment. And so that's what I'm doing here.
As we were talking, you were very clear that hope is not in your vocabulary. You rather have faith. So maybe leave us with an optimistic kind of understanding of that concept and how it drives you.
I just, and I learned this from Warner Earhart, is that anytime you're counting on the future, you're on dangerous territory, because then you don't have to be accountable for this moment. And I feel that if you care about freedom, then you have to be willing to be accountable. If you ask me what Tamarack does, it confronts people with their freedom by engaging them in ways they didn't think possible. And so I've always wondered why I still have energy for this. And it's because I just have a deep faith that who we are is just pretty nice, good enough. I've stopped working on myself. I've given up on self-improvement because it didn't turn out to be very successful. And so what am I left with? I'm just left with a kind of faith. And faith means I don't need evidence. I don't need proof. I don't need documentation. I don't need to know where that love resides in this part of my brain. I know what love is and isn't. And to me, the idea of locating it, I don't know if it grows or not. So I just, and it's faith in what? I can't finish that sentence.
Peter, thank you. Thank you for the work that you have done all your life. Thank you for building Tamarack and for inspiring us for so many years.
We believe that deepening community is the answer. Reconnecting our communities so that they are strong and resilient is so vital to addressing any community crisis or problem. Cities Deepening Community supports community changemakers to use asset-based community development with collective impact to build neighborhood strategies. We help cities, community groups, and organizations to build their knowledge and skills to put residents at the center of developing a neighborhood strategy. Join us in the movement to deepen community. Learn more at our website at www.tamarackcommunity.ca/Cities Deepening Community. And don't forget to listen to the other 5 discussions on RECONNECT, making your communities essential.